Here we have a brand new server that so far has no purpose in life. It doesn't have any roles installed. Well, actually it does. It says one role right here, and that's the File and Storage Services role. If we were to go over to where you add roles and features, you'll see that there's a black mark in here, and if we expand this and take a look, we can see Storage Services is installed. And when we read over here about it, it says that this provides functionality that's always installed and cannot be removed. So this role is always installed anyway. But now we're going to add the Active Directory Domain Services role to this, and that will allow us then to promote it to a domain controller. So let's click Add Roles and Features. We'll just go ahead past the Before You Begin page, and then past the Select Installation Type page, and then the server selection. Well, we only have one server so far, and that's this DC1. And here are the roles. We're going to add Active Directory Domain Services. It's going to add a few features, including some tools, so that we can configure the server once we get it ready. So we'll go ahead and let it add those features, and we'll click Next. And here are the features that are going to be added here, already selected for us. We'll click Next. And then Active Directory Domain Services, some information about it, and then Next, and the confirmation page. I'm going to go ahead and click Restart the destination server automatically if required, and I have to acknowledge that, and we'll click Install, and off it will go. Okay, it looks like our installation is complete, so let's click Close, and we're going to go up here to the notifications, and you can see that while the Active Directory is installed, it is not yet a domain controller. So we can now promote this to a domain controller. Are we going to add a domain controller to an existing domain? No, I'm creating a new one. Are we adding one to an existing forest? No, I'm creating the first domain in a forest, the root domain of a forest. So I'm adding a new forest. I'm going to call it widget.llc, and we'll click Next. On this page we have the functional level, and you can see that the functional level I have available to me is Windows Server 2016, even though this is a Server 2019 server. The idea of the functional level is to set all of your domain controllers to the lowest level, or I should say the highest one that you have available in your domain or your forest. So in other words, if I have other servers in this forest that are Server 2012 R2, then I need to set this one to Server 2012 R2 so that they're all compatible. I want to go as high as I possibly can, but one that's low enough that they're all in common. Along with adding the domain, we'll need the domain name system so that our computers on our domain will have a way to refer to each other by IP address. The global catalog, you can see I cannot turn that off and on. So that's just a cataloging system of users, computers, and so forth in the system. It's a little more involved than that, but that's the general idea. I am not going to have a read-only domain controller. That is a server that you would set up for a remote location, small office perhaps. It reads information from the other domain controllers, but it doesn't write information back to them. In other words, somebody out in a remote location can't mess around with your domain on you. This Directory Services Restore Mode DSRM password is a password that I can use to restore my information, my domain information, if I have a problem with this server later on. So I'll go ahead and give it a password. And we'll click Next. This page looks a little intimidating at first because you have this big message. It says a delegation for this DNS server cannot be created because the authoritative parent zone cannot be found. Well, of course there's no authoritative parent zone. I don't even have a DNS server yet on my domain. In fact, this will be my first DNS server. However, if this were not the first one, I would be able to click this and create a new DNS delegation, but it's saying I can't create one. Delegation means that I would be handing over some of my name server authority to another DNS server. The NetBIOS name is we call it a flat name. This is a name type that we used before we had the internet. With the internet, we have hierarchical names like finance.yahoo.com. It's a hierarchical system. But with the old NetBIOS naming system, which was just a Microsoft naming system, you didn't have those hierarchies. You just had a flat naming system. And so this computer in that flat naming system is just going to call itself widget. On this page, we can see the folders where various parts of Active Directory are going to be installed. And the NTDS, C Windows NTDS, is the database folder where all of the information for our Active Directory domain is going to be stored. This is just a synopsis of everything. You notice it is going to install a DNS server. So it's going to install 2 roles, not just 1 role. And I can look over this, make sure it's everything I want it to be, and go ahead and click Next, and off it goes. It's going to stop here just before it installs and give me some warnings. Now, I don't have anything red over here, so I'm not too worried, but these are just some messages. For example, this one is telling me that there is a cryptographic setting I may want to look at, and it gives me a link for more information about that. This one says that the computer has at least one physical network adapter that does not have a static IP address. Our servers should always have a static IP address, so that's something we should take note of and we should fix. A delegation for the DNS server cannot be created. We've already seen that message, so let's just go ahead and click Install. Okay, it says that we have completed our domain controller installation, and it's going to reboot itself. Okay, the reboot is done. Let's log on and see what we have. We now have 3 roles. We have Active Directory Domain Services, the DNS role, and then the file and storage services that we had prior. In order to configure any of these, we could go to the tools up here. For Active Directory Domain Services, we could have, here's the domains and trusts, and here's the users and computers. So we could deal with those from that. And what we get is this MMC window, and all of these are going to be done in an MMC. That's pretty much true for all server configurations. Most of them are done in MMCs. And then for DNS, if we click on Tools, we now have a DNS option, which we didn't have before. Which if we click, again, we get an MMC where we can do stuff with our domain controller DNS system.